بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الرحمن علم القرآن خلق الإنسان علمه البيان الشمس والقمر بحسبان والنجم والشجر يسجدان والسماء رفعها ووضع الميزان ألا تطغوا في الميزان وأقيموا الوزن بالقسط ولا تخسروا الميزان والأرض وضعها للأنام فيها فاكهة والنخل ذات الأكمام والحب ذو العصف والريحان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان خلق الإنسان من صلصال كالفخار وخلق الجان من مارج من نار فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان صدق الله العلي العظيم.
Thank you, Brother Adil, for the beautiful recitation of the Quran. Once again, welcome to the first parent night of the Az-Zahraa Islamic Academy for this school year. Alhamdulillah, by the grace of the Almighty, we find ourselves here today at the Az-Zahraa Islamic Academy's first parent night. We started off this initiative last year, and inshallah this year we're looking forward to having several parent nights throughout the year in order to build the foundation for the growth of our children together with the help of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in mind and as the center. My name is Fatima Megji. Many of you already know me, but alhamdulillah, I'm very glad to be here today with all of you. What I wanted to do right now is kind of introduce what tonight is going to look like, and also to introduce the idea behind these parent nights and inshallah what we're going to expect in the future, and also a little bit of information on the reading packages that you have all received. One of the goals of these parent nights is to cultivate a dialogue between us as a school and between you as parents. The truth is that as parents, you are the primary educator of your child, and there is no amount of school that will ever fill that role. We live in a world where our children are educated by many, not just by yourselves. They are fed knowledge and information from several places. There is the internet, there are friends, there are teachers, there are books, there is media, there is the internet, there is school, and there is more. But the truth of the matter is that the art of tarbiyah, or nurturing, upbringing of the child, the primary role of that is with, of course, the parents. And the primary role of parents can overpower the rest of these. And there's a power in parenthood that we really appreciate and that we want to focus on tonight, inshallah. We all have a role to play, and the aim of these gatherings is to bridge any gaps that exist, and for us as a school to serve you as parents in the best way possible. There is a beautiful hadith from our beloved Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, where he says, "Learning at a young age is like engraving on a stone, and the parable of the one who learns when they are adults is like the one who writes on water." What this hadith is saying is that as children have the ability to soak in a lot more than we do as adults. They are at that primary age, that primary stage in life where there is so much potential for change and growth and upbringing, and this hadith is really reflecting that. Our children on the same token, with this susceptibility and with this malleability, they're also a very vulnerable and susceptible population. They're very easily influenced by what's around them. They see, they do, and they are only just discovering how to navigate the world around them. They are in the process of learning, and they soak in what they are taught and what they see. And this malleable nature that children have is very beautiful, but it's also a huge responsibility to be aware of as both educators and as parents. Our children, like all human beings, have a fitrah, and a fitrah is the God-seeking, innate, divinely oriented nature that exists in all of us as creations of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And our job is to cultivate this fitrah, to preserve this fitrah, and to help our children understand the purpose of life, and to help them to develop their characters in the most beautiful manner. We also live in a world where many of these ideals are not shared by those around us. We live in an age where teenage celebrities are celebrated for playing video games. And yes, we have a lot of things working against us where we are. However, if we work together, we stand a chance in cultivating beautiful human beings who want to submit to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who are polite and who have beautiful characters of virtue. But again, in order for this to happen, this partnership is threefold. It requires the child, it requires the parents, and it requires the school to all be on the same page. And today we are here as a school and as parents to help open up this conversation. The difficult part of tonight's program, was choosing the topic, because there are so many different issues and things to discuss and talk about. After much consultation, we decided that this year we would try to focus on 3 areas for the 3 parent nights that inshallah we hope to have. The first is focusing on the relationship within the family. The second, the relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the third, the relationships with what goes around us in terms of our relationship with the environment around us. These are the relationships that define much of our struggle as parents and as teachers. We all want to help our children to become the best that they can be, but the struggle is sometimes how to do this. If our child is misbehaving, what can we do to help them? It's frustrating, it's stressful, and sometimes it's very daunting. Alhamdulillah though, nobody here is alone. We go through these struggles together, and tonight we want to explore how to develop a loving relationship in the family with this behavior management in mind, where we are helping our children grow, and inshallah ourselves as well grow in the process. And in order to make better decisions, we want to help them to make better decisions while cultivating a respectful and loving environment in the home. This balancing act is no easy feat, and we all make errors in the process. But tonight, inshallah, we'd like to equip you in the best way that we can in this very short next hour and a half to grow and move forward as families. At the registration desk, everybody should have received a reading package and 2 small booklets. One of the small booklets, just to give you guys a quick overview of what you have there, one of the small booklets is about positive discipline, and it's been published by the Psychology Foundation of Canada. It gives many tips of positive discipline, how to talk to kids, and a general idea of some strategies to use when talking to kids while understanding what they are going through in their minds. It's a secular attempt, so to speak, in order to try to help talk to children and also to discipline them in order to help them grow. And we believe that there's some helpful strategies in there for you to benefit from. The second booklet is by Sister Tahira Kasmali, where she goes through some Islamic principles and lessons when it comes to the upbringing of children from the Islamic perspective. We believe that these readings will help in the process of behavior management, getting it started, and in learning more. There's also a reading packet which we have designed for tonight's program. In there you will see the slides and the notes from the presentations that we will inshallah be going through. There's pages of notes, and there's also a selection of readings. In the selection of readings, there's a selection from a book on the upbringing of children. It's actually a compilation of ahadith, or narrations from our beloved Prophet and our Aimma alayhim wassalam. And in there, there's a lot of things about education, how to raise children, the balance between being too strict and being too lenient and that type of thing. But they're very beautiful hadith to, inshallah, benefit from. And we've included both the Arabic and the English translation. There are also a few tips on positive parenting, how to be both kind and firm, and also how to teach kids the difference between understanding feelings, but also understanding the consequences of actions and learning about the difference between the two. We also pray that these readings will be helpful to read about once you go home, and inshallah something to peruse through and benefit from. There's also a page with some suggested books for further readings. If you are interested, then inshallah you can go ahead and purchase those books for further strategies and tips. We thank you for your support in these initiatives, and we pray that inshallah tonight and going forward we can continue to grow as a school and as families to inshallah bring these initiatives forward. I also wanted to go through tonight's schedule very briefly, and we're going to first start off with, the introduction was by myself. We're going to start off with Shaykh Murtaza Bachoo for part 1, and then we are also going to be having a presentation from Sister Farzana Jafary. Both of them will take approximately 20 minutes with a speech and a presentation about this topic of behavior management and strategies and how to build a loving family in these issues. And then inshallah we're going to open up the floor for Q&A. We are hoping to have an interactive discussion, some interactive Q&A, and we're looking forward to hearing from you and the things that you feel you would like more advice on or more strategies on, and inshallah we're looking forward to benefiting from both of our speakers. Before I turn it over to them, I did want to also give a quick introduction to both of them, to our presenters for tonight, who thank you, alhamdulillah, thank you to both of them for agreeing to come tonight and to help and give us all tips on these issues that we're looking forward to hearing about. First off, we'll start with Shaykh Murtaza, who requires no introduction. Shaykh Murtaza is the spiritual consultant of the Az-Zahraa Islamic Center and the Al-Mustafa Academy, and he's a pivotal member of our community. He has been serving the community for the past 10 years, and he's also a member of the Az-Zahraa Islamic Academy School Board. Shaykh Murtaza spends much of his time in the community and also spends Friday afternoons with the intermediate students at the Az-Zahraa Islamic Academy. So he is very familiar with our students and the things that go on in the school. They discuss the Jummah khutbah and also pertinent issues around the world, different issues that do come up for our kids. Shaykh Murtaza is also the father of 3 children, and his parenting advice is extremely valuable. After Shaykh Murtaza presents, we are also going to have Sister Farzana Jafary. Sister Farzana Jafary is a clinical counselor who is completing her master's degree in counseling psychology at the Simon Fraser University, and she's currently providing counseling services to children, youth, and families as a practicum clinician in the Ministry of Education and Family Development. She also volunteers at the Az-Zahraa Islamic Academy as one of our counselors, and she has completed her BA in Psychology and English Literature at the University of British Columbia in 2007. She has also worked as a family and youth outreach worker and program coordinator in the past, mainly serving the immigrant and refugee population. Her passion is both community work and writing. But with that, inshallah, we will begin by welcoming Shaykh Murtaza forward. If we can have a salawat ala Muhammad.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وبه نستعين وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Thank you all for joining us this evening on another session on parenting, where not only we get to learn from the Quran and the teachings of the Ahlul Bayt, but we get to share our experiences and share our challenges with each other. I must say that the last time we had a session like this, if you remember, it was a very valuable session. And I find even today a lot of khair and barakah came from it. And a lot of it came from forming new relationships between members of the community and myself as well with members of the community. I found that parents got together, they discussed challenges together, and even after that day, they continued to discuss challenges and solutions together. And I think that's very, very valuable for us to continue developing. So inshallah, I'm looking forward to tonight, the questions that will be there in the Q&A part, and also the informal conversations that we're going to have afterwards, inshallah. I'd like to begin first, and if I can, oh, it's too small. Well, there we go. Yeah, first part of parenting. It doesn't always work the way we want it to work. So we have to be patient. The way we have to be patient as parents, you all are very familiar with that. Okay, we're good. Asantum. Should I have to use that? Okay. Okay. There might be another cable, but in the meantime, I will get started, inshallah. So you do have the notes with you, actually, in your booklets that you have picked up, or the, the Tarbiyah package that you have picked up. And the notes are titled Teaching Good Manners. And I just want to give you first and foremost an outline. Definitions will be first. The difference between akhlaq and adab. Tonight, the focus is going to be on adab, on behaviors and manners. Secondly, the importance of good manners according to our ahadith, the importance of good manners in relation to spirituality, and also the importance of good manners in relation to having a harmonious family. Thirdly, we'll look at some examples from daily life, and by no means is it going to be an exhaustive list. These are just some examples of good manners that we want to inculcate within our children. Otherwise, the book of adab, of etiquettes, of behaviors is very thick, coming from the Sunnah of the Holy Prophet. And then a very important conversation on so how do we go about nurturing good manners, especially in today's society. What are some methodologies that work really well? And what are some methodologies which are not going to work well? And perhaps if we have some time for some miscellaneous questions. So coming first to definitions. There are two terms that you will find in the Quran and in the Ahadith. The first term is adab. Adab is the plural of adab. And adab is etiquette, mannerism, behavior, how a person presents himself, particular way of doing things in certain circumstances. Akhlaq is the plural of khulq. Akhlaq means character, morals, ethics. One of the main differences between adab and akhlaq is that adab is external and akhlaq is internal. Okay? Tonight, our focus is on adab, external manners. But the bigger picture for you is that we don't just want to nurture good manners, we want to nurture good character. And one of the reasons why we have good manners is because through those manners, we want to nurture that character. For example, our manners have a lot of respect in it, because respect is an important character that we want to develop within ourselves and within our children. Now, in the ahadith, as you're going to look through sometimes the term used is husnul khulq, to have good khulq, to have good character. It means to have a good manner. For example, the Prophet of Allah, Hazrat Muhammad Mustafa sallallahu alayhi wa alih, he says, "Inna min ahabbikum ilayya," surely the most beloved of you to me, وَأَقْرَبِكُم مِّنِّي مَجْلِسًا يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ, and those who will be closest to me, sitting next to me on the day of judgment, أَحْسَنُكُمْ خُلْقًا, are those who have good akhlaq, good manners, good etiquettes. Now I just want to quickly look at the importance of having good manners in Islam. First and foremost, in the hadith, we are told it is the crux of Islam. If you were to take the message of Islam summarize it, put it into a point, the hadith says, Al-Islamu husnul khulqi. Right? The whole purpose of having laws, and also one of the purpose of having beliefs, is so that a person develops good character, and that character is manifested in good manners. Secondly, we're told that it's the perfection of Iman. A person's Iman, faith in God, can never become perfect until he has good manners. Let me put this in context for you. You know, when we raise our children, we focus on certain things. I want to make sure my child prays when they grow up. Correct? I want to make sure my child fasts when they grow up. I want to make sure they observe halal and they stay away from haram. I want to make sure they eat halal food. I want to make sure they recite the Quran when they grow up. The Prophet of Allah says this is very important. But you also have to add one more thing for all of this to reach perfection. And that one thing that has to be there, and you have to tell yourself, I want my child to have good manners when they grow up. So, in the hadith we're told, أَكْمَلُكُمْ إِيمَانًا أَحْسَنُكُمْ خُلْقًا. The best of you, the most perfect in Iman, is the one who has the best mannerism, the best behavior and etiquette. And the hadith says that a person who has good manners, he has the ajr of a person who is fasting and a person who stands up in prayer. Thirdly, the ahadith tell us this is not just something good for you to do. This is one of the rights of your children. And you will be asked about it on the day of judgment. You know that our fourth holy Imam has a really important treatise called Risalatul Huquq, the treatise of rights. In there he talks about the rights of different people. The rights of parents, the rights of neighbors, the rights of teachers, for example. In there, he also talks about the rights of children. Thank you. All right. And when the rights of children, he says, and you should know that you are responsible. وَمَسْئُولٌ عَمَّا وَلَّيْتَهُ بِهِ. You are responsible for what has been entrusted to you. In doing what? مِنْ حُسْنِ الْأَدَبِ. The first responsibility that you have is to teach good manners to your children. حُسْنِ الْأَدَبِ. Let me put it into context for you again. There are so many things that we want our children to have, and we work hard for it, right? For example, post-secondary education, it's really important. We will work hard, we will put effort, we will financially prepare for it. Or there are certain things that, we want our children to have. We don't want them to be left behind. There are certain things, perhaps sometimes we didn't have them when we were growing up. And now that we're able to afford them, we want our children to have them. Their first phone, for example, right? Or they must go for certain vacations. They should be able to have these nice clothes, for example. All of these things that we put so much effort on, we realize on the day of judgment, God is not going to ask us about it. Did you give your children good clothes? Like Nike? Yeah, or whatever it is. He's not going to ask you. Did you give them a phone when they turned 16? But the Imam says, but you will be asked about teaching him husnul adab. Did you teach him good manners and good behavior or not? It's the right of a child. It's the responsibility of a parent to be able to do that. The next part is that it engenders love and affection. Husnul khulqi yuthbitul mawadda. All right? I want you to think about the people that you like in your life. People that inspire you. People that you feel so much affection and mawadda for them. I think most of those people are people that have what? Husnul khulq. They have good manners. Good manners can really change how a person looks at you. And that goes in the family as well. One of the questions that one of the brothers had asked recently is, how do we get our children to love us and to look up to us? One of the things taught to us in the ahadith, husnul khulq. We have an example from the life of the Holy Prophet, a long story. I'll just tell you a few short lines about it. The prisoner who was a leader of a tribe was caught and brought to the Prophet, tied to one of the pillars of the masjid. The Prophet said to him, "So what do you have?" And he said, "Khair, I bring khair. If you want to kill me, you've killed a noble person. You want to forgive me, I shall be grateful. You want money, I'll give you money. I have got money." The next day the Prophet came. He said, "What do you have?" He said, "Khair." The third day, "What do you have?" The person said, "Whatever I told you the first 2 days, that's what I have to offer to you." You know what the Prophet said? The Prophet said, "Free him. Let him go." That man went on his horse, on his camel. He had reached Baqi. From the masjid, he reached Baqi. He got down, washed his face, got back up on the camel, came back in the masjid, "Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah." And he told the Holy Prophet, "Before this day, there was no face abghadu ilayya, more hated to me than your face. And today, there is no face ahabbu ilayya, more beloved to me than your face." What changed? Husnul khulq, good akhlaq. So, husnul khulqi yuthbitul mawadda, engenders affection. And last thing I want to mention is, it is hard. It's not easy. It's difficult. It engenders a struggle, especially in today's society. Raising children engenders a struggle. And I think as parents, we realize one thing, that in previous generations, the society raised the children, correct? And parents did not have to work so hard to parenting. Today's generation, we have to understand, is different. Today's society is different. Parents have to put a lot more effort into parenting and learn the skills of parenting as well. Look at the hadith. Inna Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala. Allah, blessed and exalted be He. La yu'til abda. He will give to His slave. Min al-thawabi, from the reward. Ala husnil khulqi, on having good akhlaq, having good behavior, having good manners. Kama yu'til mujahida fi sabilillah. The same way He's going to reward a person who does jihad in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. One way you know it's hard is that in his dua for children, the most beautiful dua, if you ever ask me, what dua should I make for my children? I'll tell you, the dua for children in the Sahifa. You cannot, hands down, find a better dua than this one. Okay? In that dua, the Imam says, Allahumma, oh Allah, I ask you to help me. A'inni, help me. In doing what? Ala tarbiyatihim, in raising them. Wa ta'deebihim, and also in disciplining them and giving adab to them. Okay. Moving on to the second part of our conversation. What are some of the important etiquettes that we want to have? I'm going to have to rush through this because the time is limited for tonight. Like I said, the list is not exhaustive, but here are some examples, okay? Important point about it is here. The purpose of good etiquettes is to develop good character. The goal is to make that a part of their nature, a part of their character. So, for example, the purpose of good etiquette is to develop respect for the self, the creatures of Allah, the environment around them, and ultimately and most importantly, that which is sacred, Allah Himself, right? And everything sacred that goes with it. So the first area where we want to have good etiquette in our children is in their speech. Allah says in the Quran, وَقُولُوا لِلنَّاسِ حُسْنًا. The children, your children also know this verse of the Quran, and say good things to people. And basic things we ought to teach from a very young age. The first one, saying Salamun Alaikum, and greeting people. Whenever they come home, emphasize, you should say Salamun Alaikum. When you enter a gathering, say Salamun Alaikum. Nowadays, for example, I find that if you go, and you have experienced it, if you go into any community, and children are sitting over there, and even if an elderly person passes by right next to them, nobody will pay attention to him. Those are not Islamic etiquettes. We should emphasize, no, say Salamun Alaikum, stand up, talk to that elder, that much. Using polite words, when you want something, say please. When you got something, say thank you. You know, whatever is polite language, use that polite language, emphasize those things. Having conversations, really important. You know, when we were young, we would sit in gatherings with adults and we would have some conversation with them. We would ask, how are you doing? Alhamdulillah. Right? Today you ask a child, how are you doing? Good. You won't get the question, how are you doing, uncle? Right? No, having those conversations, spending the time face to face, learning the etiquettes of conversation. You stand straight, you look at the person, you acknowledge what they're saying, you be patient, listen to them, and then reciprocate. Those are things that need to be taught to children. Avoiding rude words and foul language, right? You know, saying things like, very common to hear nowadays, I don't care. Right? Who cares? Well, this is going to happen. I don't care. Yeah, and those are the light rude words, by the way. Yeah. I heard one child telling another child one of those days that, man, that guy's really good at saying bad words. Like, he's at ninja level. It's like, wow, like, I didn't know they're supposed to be, you know. But avoiding rude words and foul language in conversation, very important, and seeking permission, okay? Moving on, this is in speech, in behavior, many adab. These are adab of mu'ashara, adab of living in a society. When it comes to presentation, the manner of sitting, when you come to a majlis or a gathering, how ought you sit in there? The manner of standing, when you stand in front of somebody, how should you stand, for example? Courtesy. Today, in today's society, courtesy has been lost. Standing up for elders, giving space to elders, right? If you're seated on a chair and an elder walks in and you're younger, you vacate that chair and give it to the elder. That should be taught. Giving space to others, offering to help and assist. You see somebody is struggling with doing something. You know, if you ever see something like that is happening, tell your child, go and help. Or at the mosque, for example, elders are serving the refreshment. You tell your child, this is not correct. You should go and serve it, for example. But teaching them to offer, to assist and help. Sharing, I'm finding children are having trouble with sharing nowadays. You know, one of the akhlaq and adab of Islam is when you have food, you always share food, or you offer to share food. Children struggle with that nowadays, right? Sharing space, sharing food, sharing equipment, for example. Tolerance and forgiveness. The idea of having patience with people and patience with the way people behave and act, very important to teach our children, right? That spirit of being patient and saying, it's okay, right? Things don't always happen when we want them or the way we want them, but I have got to be able to wait patiently. I know many of you have waited at a bank or an office for 3 to 4 hours sometimes in certain countries, for example. Yeah? But children today, the idea of waiting that long, it's, no, I don't have the patience for that. No, being patient with people and circumstances, letting go of some grievances, having empathy and compassion, the whole concept of having care for the other. Very important for us to impart to our children, and listening attentively. I have to move on. And finally, a couple of areas that we also ought to focus on. Children should also learn the etiquettes of certain spaces and activities, such as living spaces. What are the etiquettes of the dinner table? Adab. What are the etiquettes, for example, of the living room? For example, when it comes to the dinner table, right now I was having a conversation with a brother that children should learn, for example, that israf, wasting, is not a good thing. And we don't leave food or don't throw away food, for example. Those manners and etiquettes have to be taught to children. Certain spaces like their own rooms, like, for example, the bathroom, at the school, the community center. Children should also learn to respect sacred spaces and know the etiquettes of sacred spaces, like the masjid, the Quran, religious gatherings, and sacred items. All right. Now, finally, how to nurture good manners. I normally, in many areas I teach, you got to do 3 things. And these are the 3 things I want you to keep in mind right now, and we'll go through some examples. The first one is promote goodness. The second one is role model goodness. And the third one is support goodness. Promote, role model, and what? Support. Everything we do comes down into these 3 things. The first one is promote goodness, promote good manners from a very young age. Right? I know there's a hadith that says that the child is a king for the first 7 years. That doesn't mean like, okay, you don't have to parent the child. Let them do whatever they want to do. No, it means that you don't have to put them under severe instruction, sit them down in a classroom type and say, okay, I'm going to teach you this. But at the same time, you have to teach good manners to them at a very young age. So I'm sorry, but here I'm going to use examples being a parent, what has worked for me, and inshallah you will share some of your examples. For example, our son is 2 years of age, but when he goes into a gathering, I tell him, say salam. Extend your hands to shake. And at that age, they learn to extend their hands, to shake hands, for example. At a very young age, we want to teach that. Promote good manners through statements, through examples, through stories. Right? Sometimes when you have a story, tell them the story about good manners. It doesn't have to be a lecture always, a story, or even conversations. And conversations are really important. I found the Prophet of Allah, one of his ways of teaching good manners was through conversation. Somebody came to the Prophet, a young child, and he said, so when I have to enter my parents' room, I have to knock. Why? Ask the Prophet. Hadith is there, I can show you. And the Prophet of Allah, rather than saying, okay, this is قال Allah Azza wa Jal. No. The Prophet said, so let's say if you weren't going to knock and you went into the room and one of your parent was changing, would that be nice? And the child said, no. And the Prophet said, then don't you think you should knock before you go in? And the child said, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah? Conversations, very, very important. Promote good manners as a part of identity. This is what we do as Muslims. It really works, especially later on in life. As a Muslim, this is something that we don't do. And there are different ways of doing it. Tonight, I don't have time. But you can say, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala likes it when you do this. Or a mu'min or an insan, it does not befit him to do this. Or if you do this, you'll get this ajr from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So there are different ways of promoting goodness. And use teachable moments to establish good manners, right? So for example, a situation comes up. Once I was having a conversation. I went for a walk with one of my daughters. And I was having a conversation and she was telling me, this is what happened at school today. So I said, okay. This is an opportunity for me to teach you one thing today. I said, so what do you think? Did this person do the right thing? They said, no, I don't think so. They should have done it this way. I said, yeah, you know, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala teaches us. Use those moments. It's not that every day we're going to have to sit down and say, okay, today we have a 15-minute class. No. Sometimes the opportunity comes up. As they say, the nail is hot. You got to strike it at that time. Promote good manners. Very important. Discourage bad manners as well. When they are doing it or they are talking about it, you have got to discourage that which is wrong as well. For example, with our children, you know, after school, children come home. They like to talk about what happened at school. This person did this and that person did that. And then we started to teach them that no, when you mention their names, this is a ghibah, this is not good. And in time they learn. And now they'll come home and they'll say, this happened, but I won't tell you who did it. Yeah? Say, okay, that's all right. But at least, alhamdulillah, you learned that this is not part of good adab for us to have. And place children in an environment that promotes good manners. You know, you've sent your children to the school because you want them in an environment that has good manners. At home, they are with you in an environment that has good manners. One thing that also affects the manners of your children is the content that they watch on TV. A lot of the disrespect, the non-caring, lack of respect towards parents, it comes from celebrities. It comes from TV. In 2017, there was a research done by one of the professors, and this is just part of the research. He says both the quantity and the content. Quantity and what? Content of television viewing by children may affect social behaviors long term, with effects that may also last into adulthood. The results of 2 studies have shown, for example. Right? Now, of course, I've got to point out that it's not always the case where you'll be able to control the environment. And you need to be cognizant of that as well. Sometimes when they come in the society, they come in the community, they come at the school, it's not that everybody around them is going to have good manners, or everybody around them is going to have the values that we want our children to have. And that's where it's really important for us to be able to have conversations with our children. Yes, this person is doing this, and yes, this person is part of our family or part of our community, and they are a good person, but this action, what do you think? That's not a good action, for example. Okay? So one is promoting good manners. The second one is role modeling it. We have to live the manners that we want them to have. I find that what we do at a young age for them has a greater impact upon them than what we say to them. Yeah? I find that if we talk to children with respect, we will find they will talk to us with respect as well. So if we talk to them with adab, they also respond back with adab. For example, some parents have the habit when they talk to their children, I can't explain this in English, because in English, whether a person is an adult or young, the word is you. But in Urdu or Farsi or Arabic or other languages, there are two different, even French, for example, there are two different terms being used. There's a you for respect, and there's a you for, somebody who's at the same level as you, right? When they talk to their children, they use the you for respect. If I can use the example in Farsi, not trying to pick any particular language, they'll say shuma, for example, right? I say, why do you do that? I said, well, because I want to teach him how to speak to me, right? And those who don't do that, they find the children also speak to them in the same manner, for example, right? How we choose to express and manage our frustration, we find children will also do the same. When we get angry at our children and we scream at them or we shout at them, don't be surprised that the day they get frustrated, notice one thing, they will behave the same way that we behave. The way we choose to let go of our frustration is the same way they're going to do that, right? So number one, exhibit good manners in the family. Number two, do not be selective in exhibiting good manners. So for example, with certain people, I behave this way, and certain people, I behave that way. In these situations, I behave this way. In those situations, I behave that way. You know what they learn from it? We may have justifications. You know what they learn from it? They learn that if my parents can be selective, guess what? Yeah. When it is convenient, I will have these manners. When it's not convenient, I'm going to have those manners. That's what they learn from it. And what we want to teach them is no. Manners, akhlaq, values are what define our lives. When it's convenient and when it is not convenient. So don't be selective in role modeling good manners. And thirdly, find good role models for the children. Finally, supporting it. Number one is healthy lifestyles lead to good manners. Okay? Children, if they don't get enough sleep, sometimes the reason why they don't have good manners is because they haven't gotten enough sleep. Healthy lifestyles lead to good manners. Living well, eating well, managing, for example, how much time they spend in front of TV. All of that is part of developing good manners in children and supporting good manners within them. To reward good manners and have some consequences for bad ones. When a child does something good, I know we only notice a child when they've done something bad. And we say, why did you do that? What we really need to do is reinforce the right things that they are doing. When they do something good, we reward them from it. And rewarding doesn't mean that we have to give them a gift each time. Rewarding means I recognize that was really good what you did. Give them a hug, embrace them. I'm really proud of you. That was nice that you did. Or keep that in mind. At night you come, for example, and say, today I noticed you did that. That was very nice of you to do. That itself can be a reward and have some consequences for bad ones. And inshallah, Sister Farzana will speak about what are good consequences and what are bad consequences. But I really want to draw your attention to this booklet that you have. There is a part of a book in there, Children in Quran and Sunnah. That book is amazing. I think as parents, you've got to have a copy of it. It is available online though. Okay? Selection of ahadith about parenting. Beautiful ahadith, translation par excellence. Right? So for example, there are different topics or choices in there. But one hadith that I found very beautiful, somebody came and complained to the seventh Imam, Al-Imam Al-Kadhim, alayhi afdalu salati wassalam. He says, Shakawtu, I complained to him, Ibn li, about my child. He's not listening to me. You know these complaints that we have, and not new, happened in the time of the seventh Imam. He said, doesn't listen to me, what do I do? Look at the Imam. فَقَالَ لَا تَضْرِبْهُ. Don't strike him, never hit him. Don't use physical punishment towards him. وَهْجُرْهُ. Sometimes leave him, like take away his privileges. Right? Take away those extras. Don't pay attention to him. Then even there the Imam says, وَلَا تُطِلْ. But don't do that for a long time. Huh? Don't deprive him of your love for a long time. Because if you do that for a long time and somebody else feels that, that's going to be also a problem as well. All right. Number 3, turn manners into habits. We encourage it so much until it becomes a habit. And I don't have time to talk about why habits are important for children. But one thing I should tell you is that what we use sometimes is our aql to control our emotions. And their aql has not yet fully developed. So what they need sometimes to control their emotions and their lives are what? Habits. And finally, have conversations with children about bad manners. I know that when they're not listening to us and they're not doing the right thing, we can get very frustrated. We can get very upset. It's very easy to come down with a heavy hand, but it's really important during those moments that we have a conversation with them. And I think that inshallah is a good segue into what Sister Farzana has to present. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wahlul uqdatam min lisani wafqahu qawli. Brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum. So Shaykh Murtaza enlightened us with some very significantly important tips of parenting that we need to teach our children, but how? Parenting is not easy, is it? I was 18 or 19 when I had my first child. And I was very inexperienced and didn't know anything about parenting. So it took me a while to learn how to burp them, how to feed him, when to feed him, how much to feed him, when to put him to bed, and when to do this or that, and how to take care of him. And by the time I became really confident and thought that, oh, okay, I've got everything under control, I've learned, I'm a skilled parent, and I can even identify his needs by the way he cries, guess what? He had already grown into the next stage with new challenges and new needs that I didn't know anything about. And now that my sons, for those of you who know me, my sons are grown-ups. Now I've realized that at some point I realized that this changing from one stage to another, this change of needs and change of issues and problems in parenting continues while we live as parents. But the good news is that there are some set of certain skills that if we learn, it's going to be good and effective across all these stages. Even though we change, our children change, and we kind of move around that relationship with different, adjusting ourselves to the roles. If we know those skills, if we master them, they're going to stay with us for the rest of our parenthood. So, do this. I guess not. Sorry about that. You do? Okay, good. So I'm wondering if there is any parents who can say that I'm a parent and I've never had one of those hectic mornings when I had to get them out of the bed and help them get dressed, excuse me, and convince them to have a bite for breakfast and get ready and worry about being late and drop them off to school. We all have had those moments. And those frustrated nights when we want to put them to bed, but they're not sleepy. And we're getting worried that they're not going to get enough sleep, and they're going to be late for school tomorrow, and they're going to be tired, and all of that. And worrying about their eating. And most terrible of all is being a parent and sitting through the misery of our child throwing a tantrum, not knowing what to do. Being exhausted, being confused, and being frustrated is a normal, inevitable part of parenthood. That's normal. It's okay. We all have experienced that. There's no such a thing as perfect family or such a thing as perfect parents. We all go through the same struggles. What matters is how to deal with those situations, how to manage those conflicts in order to have successful parenting experience. So the building blocks for successful parenting is to have to build a secure parent-child relationship. Without that, nothing is possible. We cannot, without a secure parent-child relationship, we cannot teach them anything because they're not willing to learn from us. And what is a secure parent-child relationship? The building block for that is interpersonal communication, effective interpersonal communication. What is effective interpersonal communication? Sounds easy, just listening and speaking, but how? So let's talk a little bit more about that. So effective parent-child, effective communication between parent and children have three aspects: active listening, empathic responding, and the ability to use I messages. So we're going to get into each of these and explain a little bit about it. What is active listening? So active listening is very different from hearing. It's not only about ears, and it's very different from normal listening. Active listening is, in fact, whole body listening. So it involves our cognition, our attention, our eye contact, our whole body posture, arms, and facial expression, so everything. So it's a full body listening, in fact. And it's important to remember that sometimes when we're busy in today's busy lifestyles, we're busy cooking, or we have to finish an email, or we're working on a project, and our child comes from school, and they usually come from school with a lot of stories, and they're willing to talk to us, and they start talking, and then while we're cooking, we say, yeah, I'm listening, honey, continue. Or while we're typing our project, working on our project, we just say, yeah, I'm listening, continue, I'm hearing you out. But the message that this gives to them is that I have more important stuff to do. I don't have time for you. That's not the message that we want to give our children. What we can do, I understand, we can turn off the stove, close the laptop, sit on the couch in a corner, and give them that full body listening, that active listening, and hear them out. But understanding that we're busy parents nowadays, and in the interest of time, we want to cook the dinner or do our project and listen at the same time. I know maybe a lot of us are multitask, not me though. But what is important is to give them the right message. So even if we can do that, we are multitask, it's important, pause for 1 minute. If they're younger children, we can sit, so we have in the same eye level as them, and explain to them that I can hear that you have something important to share with me, and I'm really willing to listen to that. Can you give me half an hour or 1 hour, whatever time you need, to wrap up my cooking or my project, because I have to send this, and then I want to listen to you with full attention without worrying about what I'm doing. So there are 3 steps to active listening. The first step is to listen patiently and genuinely. So that means while we're listening, we're actually listening, and we're not in our head thinking, what would be the right answer to say? How should I respond? Should I be mad? Should I not? Is this a good time to lecture him or her? And the second part of active listening is to try to put ourselves in their shoes and try to see their experience through their eyes. And they're in a different position in society. They have a lot of limitations as children, and they might experience things very differently from where we stand. So it's important to try to use their words, travel to their world, and try to see their experience from their point of view. And then the third step would be to understand what is the message, the underlying message in what they say, and what feeling is attached to the message. And it's important to always avoid, because we automatically try to use every opportunity to preach them or giving them advice or giving them reassurance. I know those are the easiest way to do it, but it's important. It kind of closes down the channel of communication. So it's important to validate them first, and then we can do the rest of the communication. So for example, if they say that, I wish I never had to go to dentist, as parents we would say that, but you have to. But the underlying message is that they're scared and they need reassurance. There's that fear. Or if, for example, they say, I hate math, this is the most useful subject. The underlying message is they're frustrated, they find it challenging, they need help. So we automatically sometimes, unfortunately, negate them and say that, no, that's not right. You shouldn't say that. You shouldn't. Math is good, or this is, it's not going to work. It's going to just close the channel of communication. So the effective way would be to validate them. And the third example is, Mommy, please, 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 let me go to the park with my friends. I promise to be back before it's dark. The first thing that we go to, the first answer that comes to our mind is about what we think. But it's important to validate their feelings, that it sounds like you're really excited to go to the park. And then we can move to the rules, if they're allowed or not. And then after the active listening stage comes the empathic response. So when we do the active listening, we identify their feelings and the message. It's important to communicate that back to them in our own words. So we identify the feelings and the reasons behind those feelings, and then communicate to them so they know that we get it. We get what they are and how they experience things. So for example, you seem to be very upset because the field trip was canceled today. You were very excited about this field trip, and it is disappointing that it got canceled last minute, rather than justifying it and say, well, at least you came home early, be grateful for that. Or, well, there is a lesson for everything, let me tell you, my son, and start lecturing and preaching. Or judging that it's not really good that you get upset over everything, so fast. And then the use of I messages. So I messages are the constructive and healthy way to communicate our feelings and thoughts without sounding threatening or controlling. And why? Why is it important? Because as parents, we are still human. It's right that we don't do that much self-care, but let's remember that we have needs and we have feelings as well. And children are the other party in that parent-child relationship, and they are entitled to know how we feel about the situations between us. And guess what? They don't have the magic power to read minds. So most of the time we think that they know how we feel, but they don't. It's important for us to let them know how we feel about different situations. So rather than using you messages, I messages starts from us, from what we own, from our thought, from our feelings. But you messages start from you. So it kind of pushes the ball in the child's court and starts this blame game, or put them on their defense already. So while you messages can start this blame game, I messages is a good way to help them develop sensitivity and responsibility and notice how their actions might impact somebody else's feeling. And it's important to be honest in using iMessages. It doesn't give us this certification that, okay, I'm using iMessages, but exaggerate it and make it look really bad and do that, sending them to that guilt trip, but saying that, well, I just said my feeling. So it's important to be honest about it. Oops, this is not the right one. Okay, so there were some examples, but I guess that slide is not there. So for example, instead of saying that you are so rude to interrupt me when I talk, we can use an iMessage and say, I feel so frustrated when I start talking and I get interrupted. This way, they're going to know that they did the interruption and we feel frustrated, and without using that energy to defend themselves, we give them that opportunity to think that, oh, maybe I shouldn't interrupt her or him. So using iMessages, give them that opportunity, that flow of thought and logical reasoning that, okay, so maybe I shouldn't do this, maybe I should do that, and for them to realize what's the right thing to do. And then there are a few slides here about effective communication tips. I'm going to just go through them faster. So lecturing, blaming, threatening would end up creating this power struggle, resistance, rebellion, and revenge. And it's not very effective. And it's important to remain, not to use negative language and use positive language instead. For example, we don't go around on a daily basis saying to people what we don't want. If I want a cup of coffee and I go to Tim Hortons, I don't say, can I not have a cup of tea? It's not automatically, they won't know. If I say I don't want tea, they won't think that, oh, okay, then she wants coffee. So it's the same thing with our children. We need to tell them what we want them to do. So instead of saying, don't yell, we can say, use your soft voice. Instead of saying, don't throw your jacket on the floor, we can say, please put your jacket in the closet. So using the positive language. And lecturing. Instead of lecturing, when we lecture, if our children are younger, they're going to just, try to hold their ears and stop listening. And if they're older, they're going to roll their eyes and they're going to say something under their breath that, oh, start it again. So it's not effective. Instead, we can use just one keyword. So if I want my daughter, for example, to wash the dishes, and I said a couple of times and they either ignored or got busy and forgot, instead of saying that when I was your age, I had to wash the dishes for the whole family 3 times and this and that and that and that, and then and I got consequences if I didn't do that, they stopped listening right at the first second. Instead, we can say just one word, the dishes, pointing to the dishes, that's it. It's going to be way more effective. And threats. Using threats damages personality, children's personality. It's very important not to use threats in our relationships. For example, if our child does something that is not accepted in our culture or religion, instead of saying Allah will not love you anymore, or things like that, we can instead give information and say, you know, in our religion, it's a wajib duty for us to do it this way or that way, or to avoid doing this way or that way. So give them information and expect them and open that, you know, flow of thought for them to arrive to the right decision. And more about communication skills when there is a problem behavior. This is, I cannot stress this enough, that it's very, very important that when we, obviously as parents, we want to and we should express our disapproval if our children are doing something wrong. But it's very, very important to express the disapproval towards the behavior, not the person. So instead of saying, I'm not your mom anymore, you're not my child anymore, I don't like you, or God forbid, I hate you, instead of saying those things and God forbid, let them internalize that sense of guilt and shame and self-despise and turn into anger issues and, you know, more complicated issues. Instead, we can just focus on the behavior. So the underlying message would be that I'm still your mother or your father, and you're still my child, and I love you and I support you. However, this certain behavior bothers me a lot. This gives them the sense of respect and control. The underlying message would be that I'm still a good person, and there are expectations that a good person is not supposed to do the bad actions. So that hope to change would continue to exist in their mind and in our mind. And so last but not least, it's important to build that sense of self-confidence and self-discipline and making decision-making skills in them while they're young, and learn to let go at some point. So for example, we let them from a very early age, instead of pulling them out of the park, we can say, do you want to go home now, or you need 10 more minutes to wrap up your play? And letting them choose, like we're going to party or somewhere formal, instead of saying that, no, you have to wear this dress, we can say, so it's a formal party, do you want to wear your white shirt or the blue shirt? So give them that sense of choice for them to practice making decisions. And then at some point, we need to learn to let go and let them experience the natural consequences of life. If it's raining and they're not wearing the jacket, let them experience that in rain they're going to get wet. If it's cold and they're not putting on their jacket, let them see that when they're not wearing their jacket, they're getting cold. So we can't control every step of the way. We need to, at some point, let go, let them learn the natural way. And let's remember that our children are not our creations. They're God creations just the way we are. We don't own them. We as parents have certain responsibilities, like Shaykh mentioned, responsibilities that are defined by Allah. We do our best to do those responsibilities and leave the rest to Allah. Thank you for listening.
Ahsantum. Thank you, Sister Farzana, for that presentation. That was quite insightful. I thought there were some really good points made about how to speak to children. And also the examples I found were very, very relevant and useful. At this time, we're going to open up the floor to any questions, thoughts or comments that you have or you'd like to share. If you are interested, I'm just afraid that he might hurt himself, or he might get hurt. Yeah, alhamdulillah. Thank you. Inshallah, one day he goes up there as an alim, and we pray for him. He's getting good practice, and one day we'll let him go. We'll let go of it, yeah, inshallah. Anyways, open the floor to questions or thoughts or comments that you may have. And if you don't have, we have an early tea. Yeah. Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah. Maybe if I can just pass on the mic and you can.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you for providing this good and helpful lecture for us. I learned a lot. And I have a question about youth individual, for example, grade 5 to grade 7. My concern for my daughter is that they pay attention to, for example, which brand they use. And I ask parents teach their kids they use, but that is not important what we put on, what brand we use, that's very popular in youth people. And for example, my daughter say, if I don't get Vans, for example, they bully me. I told you have very nice boots, you have very nice, we provide, for example, when we were in Iran, it's nice brand in Iran, for example. I explain, but still she say, oh, mommy, they bully me. We explain, we teach our kids it's not important for us to make friendship, how we wear, it's important our behavior, especially in Islamic school, is very important, and that's a challenging time for me to. I explain a lot to my daughter that is not really important. You have to teach your friends and ask parents. It's good whatever they want to buy, what brand that doesn't matter, but they don't look at each other, their appearance to find friends. That's important. Parents teach them to avoid that. Sorry.
Hassan, thank you for sharing that concern, and I think that's a concern for many parents, not just yourself, and it's been a concern for a very long time. I remember when I was growing up in certain, not in Vancouver, but other communities, children would actually come and turn the collar around to see which brand it is and whether it's fake or it's real, and then make a judgment based on what that person was wearing. I'm really happy that you're having the conversation with your children, and you'll continuously need to have those conversations with them to assure them that, what we wear, for example, is not what defines us as a human being. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, خُذُوا زِينَتَكُمْ عِنْدَ كُلِّ مَسْجِدٍ. Take your adornment to every mosque. Atla Jawadi makes a very interesting point about that. He says that the good clothes that you wear, that's the adornment of your body. And your akhlaq is the adornment of your soul, right? That's what defines you. So having that conversation with them continuously is really important. The second thing that you might have to build in the child is a sense of self-confidence, and it's okay to be different, and not always are we going to get assurance from those who are around us. Because when they go into society, there are certain things. Today you can choose if you want to, for example, to buy brand names to some extent for the children, right? But there are certain things that we don't have a choice over. Like, for example, they may go into society and society says, don't wear the hijab. And that's not a choice anymore to not wear the hijab. So developing that sense of confidence that, your affirmation comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Your affirmation comes from the Quran and the Ahlul Bayt. Right? Sometimes I tell young daughters who are coming up, now going into bulugh, I say, yeah, all these different clothes that you wear, this one, this person thinks you're beautiful, this one, this person thinks you're beautiful. When you wear the hijab, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala thinks you're beautiful, right? So for them to have that sense of self-confidence as well, really, really important. The third thing also is it's important to have a balance when we have, when we are working with children. To some extent, Islam teaches that when a child has a particular desire, if that's something that they need, and let's say it is a fitri need that they have, then one way to fulfill that is to provide it in moderation. So for example, when we have children who want to watch the screen or TV, we don't completely deny them, right? Because if we completely were to deny them, then the first time they get an opportunity to watch something, it comes out very strongly within them. So in some moderation, we give them that which is permissible. In the case of, for example, I don't want to use the example of brand name clothing, but maybe if it's possible to provide them with 1 or 2 items that would satisfy them, for example, then that way they don't have that desire always burning within them to say, oh, I don't have. No, I have. And sometimes you find that once they get it themselves, 1 or 2 items, and they wear it, and they realize, oh, it doesn't feel any different. I'm the same person. Then sometimes they say, yeah, it's not really that important. So, Farzana, anything to add to that?
You put it very perfectly. Just the psychological kind of view and tip on how to have this conversation. As parents, we usually think that as soon as our children ask a question, we think that we should know all the answers. We should respond to them quickly and make sure that they don't think about anything negative and they get the right answer. But the best way would be to ask them questions and start that conversation in a way, kind of facilitate, with a conversation with them, facilitate them to arrive to the right questions. Like, for example, in this case, we can ask them, why is it so important to you? And then they say, because my peers value that. So what if they don't, what if they judge you? What do you think? Do you think it brings your value down if you're not wearing a brand name? Or ask questions and let them think and see and get to the core of that belief, that why they think it's important for them to have that. And that helps them with building some self-confidence. And if they choose not to wear brand names or whatever behavior they choose, at least they know that it's in line with their values. Because nobody will say that, no, because I'm worthless and if I wear something expensive, then I'm going to be worthy. So if they come to the core of, to the root of why they think that it's important to wear brand names, then it's going to be easier for them to say that, no, I don't want to because I think I am valuable.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you so much for the lectures. My question is that where should I draw the line between rights and privileges? My daughter just learned about this, and she's driving me crazy with these questions. And the thing is that I know that for punishments, I can take some privileges. I cannot take privileges away. I cannot take her rights away, right? But the thing is that she thinks that everything is her right. And like she always tells me, oh, that's not fair, that's not fair. And like, for example, her watching time. Like we said, okay, half an hour per day is your watching time. And then I already know that it's not, it's little, like she needs it after she comes from school. But it's one of the very good things that I can take away, and she would behave very good after that. And then if I take that half an hour away from her, she gets so upset. She's like, no, Mom, that's not fair. I'm tired. I need my watching time. And some days, you know, like as parents, we have different days, right? So some days I feel compassionate. I said, oh yeah, you're right. You're very tired. So, okay, whatever. You just have your watching time, and then I'm going to take away something else, you know? But some days that I'm very frustrated, I'm saying, no, that's it. You're not going to get any watching time. So she always thinks that, like, she thinks that it's not fair. It's something, and I really try to explain it to her in so many ways that I know. Like, comparing with other people, it's not the right way. It's different here from there. But it's getting very challenging for me. Thank you.
Yeah, I think I'll share a couple of points and pass it on to Sister Farzana. I do think that when children want something and you take it away from them, it's never fair for them, right? And of course, they're going to say that it is not fair. Perhaps they're trying to communicate and say that I don't like what you have done. But truly, do they understand what's fair and what's not fair? I think that something that the child needs for their growth, and if you were to take it away, it would impact their growth, well, that's something that's a right that they have, right? They have a right to sleep and to rest. We take away rest time. They have a right to food because their bodies cannot grow without food, for example. They have the right to clothing, right? These are rights because they need it for their growth and they need it for their own self-respect, honor, and dignity, their physical, emotional well-being. Something that they don't necessarily need for their growth, and taking it away once or twice is not going to, for example, impact their growth. That's not a right, that's a privilege, right? So watching time is a privilege, and sometimes taking it away or taking away a part of it, that's okay to do. I think it's also important to show some flexibility over there. And like we've said before, having that conversation that, oh, we had said that if you do this, this is going to be a consequence of it, right? And now, because you've done this, I'm going to take away some of that time from you. And sometimes, to give in when the, circumstance demands for it. Like, for example, when the child is tired and you realize she just needs some break right now. I don't think that's a wrong thing to do necessarily. That's just recognizing the need of the circumstance and showing that you are flexible, that you're not inflexible, for example. But I think with taking that away, for example, we shouldn't expect, of course, the child will say, yes, Mom, I have understood. You are right. I confess I made the mistake, and I'm not going to do that again. They're still children, and sometimes they're using terminology to express something else. They're saying it's not fair. What they really mean is, I just don't like what you have done. Yeah? Go ahead.
Thank you very much. So you just, sister, said the answer in your question. The answer is that sometimes we have that compassion, sometimes we don't, sometimes we're busy, sometimes we're not. So depending on our mood, we change our decisions. And that gives the message to them that, well, last time I cried and she allowed me, so it's going to work this time too. And even if the second time we say, no, absolutely not, the third time they're going to still try. So it's very, very important if we want to go with a certain rule to be consistent, to always go with the same rule. If it's 30 minutes per day or 1 hour per day of screen time, stay with that rule. Obviously, they're not going to like it. They're going to think we are the worst mom in the world and this is not fair. They're going to try their best to push us and make us, feel bad for them or feel bad about ourselves. Like, what kind of mother am I? When I disciplined my daughter, I remember that my sons were like, you can be very mean. And I was like, yeah, sometimes I can. So it's important for us to know what we actually want and be consistent. Consistency is very, very important. I don't know if that makes sense. I know it's very difficult thing. Yeah. And it takes a very long time. It's not easy. Like if they have got mixed messages, it's not easy. It's not going to happen over a couple of times or even 10 times. It takes a while for them to learn that, oh, this is not going to work. And then eventually they're going to calm down and they're going to know automatically when we remind them that your half an hour has passed, they're going to automatically know that, oh, okay, so I shouldn't waste any time crying or asking for more, and just, should find some other ways to entertain myself.
Sorry, just to add, I think it's best to give them a reminder 10-15 minutes before the time.
Yes, yeah.
Just adding to the conversation, I think it's best to give them a reminder 10-15 minutes before their time limit.
Yeah.
And then they are ready, so when the time comes in half an hour, they already know that the time is passed.
Sometimes
so
they get
it's
carried
easier
away,
to take the TV or cell phone away from them.
Yeah, that's right. That would be helpful too. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, yeah, definitely. Yeah. No, I if I get your question right, it's you mean like there are certain circumstances where we have to be more flexible or we have to be more strict, and how can we explain that to them so they don't see us as inconsistent? So that transparency, to be transparent with our children and explain to them about different situations. Like if they had a really rough day and you just want to give them a little bit more screen time, or they had I don't know, dentist visit that give them a lot of anxiety, and you want them to watch, instead of 1 hour, an hour and a half of a cartoon or movie, it's important to explain to them that because this happened today, it's okay, we're going to change the rule a little bit today, so they know that the rule still exists, but it's a special circumstance. You're welcome.
Yes, Said Farhan.
Thank you very much for Az-Zahraa and all the organizers who gave us the opportunity to join this session and get a lot of knowledge to deal with our kids, especially. Initially, I have only two things to mention here. One, in the beginning, as Shaykh mentioned about all those manners and adab. So we as parents, we try to teach our kids the best of the manners at all our levels, but I think the most important or the most impactful thing is that when they get it from someone else. Like if in the classroom, when teachers tell them that, okay, these are the good manners and these are the bad manners. If you see some elder, say salam, or you stand up in respect. So those are the things that they remind in a better way. They remember that in a better way, and it makes a better impact. I know this is a parents' night, not the teachers' night. So, but still, and teachers do have some responsibility or their part on that. And in continuation of the first question about the peer pressure or the bullying, as you know that it happens in every class or specifically when we talk about the school. So my question here is that is there any part on the part of teachers that they should mention these things in the class and give students a feeling that bullying or making these kind of comments are not good? So if you want to comment on that, thank you.
Assalamu alaikum. Inshallah, I'll answer this question, and I'll also, inshallah, we'll close off because I think we are hitting the clock. Alhamdulillah, at Az-Zahraa Islamic Academy, we do try to have different talks, different programs about anti-bullying, about respect for each other. One of the things that we've introduced this year with the help of Brother Rizwan, who's joined us this year, is every month we have different virtues that we're focusing on as a school. So some of you may have heard that on Friday mornings, instead of the prior MVP award, we have something called the Road to Nobility Award. And in this, one of the things that we're trying to do is to focus on different virtues every month. So one of them is, for example, respect and community, or building and cultivating those types of things. So of course, we definitely do have a responsibility as teachers, and we are, inshallah, trying to continue on these initiatives. We have had, in previous years, different weeks that are dedicated to, for example, anti-bullying or respect for each other, and inshallah, we do hope to continue that. Sometimes when we have the wiladas and the different occasions throughout the calendar year, we also try to mention those things and focus on them in the assembly. But of course, it's always a work in progress. There's always so much more that we can be doing, and inshallah, so much more that we, inshallah, hope to pursue in the future. But with that, I just wanted to kind of close off the Q&A session because we are getting towards the end. But before I do, I just wanted to thank Shaykh Murtaza and Sister Farzana, if we can give them both a loud salawat ala Muhammad.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali. Before we end, or I pass it back to Sister Fatima, just also want to inform you that, alhamdulillah, this year, one of the reasons why we are being able to have these programs and other initiatives at the school is that this year Sister Fatima is in a new role at the school. She is both a coordinator and an Islamic consultant at the school, and she is overseeing the development of the curriculum, but also the environment at the school, the parent sessions, for example, that happen, the resources that are being used at the school, and overlooking generally the Islamic values and needs that we have over there. As I think as parents, it's important for us to know that, but also when you have any sort of comments or feedback or something that you'd want your child to learn, or you want to know, okay, what are we doing about this? Like, Sayyid Farhan asked right now, please feel free to contact her and get in touch with her and share with her some of the experiences that you have had. That helps us to develop more programs or better programs and initiatives for the students and for the parents. Thank you. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.